Okay, well, here we go. Brandon Boudreaux's trial is coming to its end finally. And Lori, man, she had the galls to sit in front of everyone, including the person that she badgered most, Brandon Boudreaux, and manipulate her and the jury as believing she is a victim. Like always, for years and years and years, Lori Vallow has always been a victim. She has never been responsible for any of these bad things happening whenever she comes into your life. I have to say that Treena Kay did a wonderful job. It shows that she was working very hard on this case and she knew this case inside out. She even come to know ahead of time Lori's techniques, who she really is, and what her objectives are when she addresses any type of person, including public and juries. And what was even more interesting is the fact that we heard Melani Boudreaux Pawlowski's name come up more than we ever have in the 6 years that we've followed this case. Does this mean something? Well, we sure hope so. Well, finally, Melani Boudreaux Pawlowski face up to all the harm and the chaos she helped her Aunt Lori create, especially being part of trying to take the life of her own children's father. And let me add allegedly to that. It was obvious that Treena, the prosecutor, had had enough and that, well, she was also struggling to keep the doors closed because there were opportunities that the door were open, but Treena was able to contain herself and keep professional until, well, she still did it, but at closing arguments would be Lori's closing statements. She peeked just a little bit through that door and gave the jury an idea that there's a lot more going on than just this one incident for Lori Vallow. So Treena Kay kept it very simple. She was very focused on all that circumstantial evidence that really is hard to deny, Lori would have any part of this. Guys, got to remember there is a lot of missing puzzle pieces to this. And Lori knows this. Somehow she's gets the scoop. Somebody's informing Lori. Who is it? A lot of people are wondering even if her father is helping her along, but that would be crazy. Especially when you consider the fact that she had deemed most of her family members dark and zombies, and most likely could have been next on her list. So Treena did. She went straight to the evidence that would basically impact the jury's decisions on this case, making it simple and hopefully not that long to deliberate. She talked about the gun, the Jeep, the 911 call, how Alex Cox, Lori's brother, was Googling the crap out of Google, checking on back roads to escape, looking at his address, including putting in the zip code, an address that not anyone should have knew except for a few people. The only person that Alex Cox knew that could have had that address was Melani Boudreaux. Again, this is a very tough case to cover without telling the entire story. But after these closing arguments, I'm certain that the jury is going, there's something more going on to this, and I want to know more. Probably the most interesting part is, for me, on some of it, is September 25th, when Melani Boudreaux tells Brandon she has plans to go out of town exactly the same time that Alex Cox is tinting his Jeep and planning to take a trip from Idaho to Arizona. Also, the $200 re-tint job, because you got to remember that Jeep was already tinted, and Treena Kay made sure that the jury understood that. Why would somebody want to tint a Jeep that's already tinted. And why so dark? She focused also on the burner phone. Very interesting circumstantial evidence when it comes to that burner phone that Alex Cox bought at Walmart. Police were able to determine that that burner phone that he purchased was used for only one trip, and that was the trip from from Idaho to Arizona, from Arizona to Idaho. So one trip. By the 26th of September, you got to remember, guys, this is shortly after they murdered JJ, okay? He was just murdered a few days ago. 26, Melani is headed to Lori's townhome in Idaho. So they were able to also capture Alex Cox's movements not only by GPS, but tag readers. So very strong evidence showing that what the prosecutor suspects happened that day most likely did. I mean, it fits in perfectly. I don't think you're going to see the jury having to deliberate very long at all. Probably the most damaged information was where Lori was caught or suspected of having Alex Cox's phone with her while Alex Cox made that trip from Idaho to Arizona. Let's not forget they were able to find phone activity of Lori and Alex Cox's phone supposedly in communication with each other while Alex Cox was in Arizona. And that lasted over, I can't remember, was it 40 minutes? So the prosecutor is trying to show the jury how she was deliberately trying to establish alibis in all of this crazy activity. Lori was pretty much proven in my book with the evidence that they have that she seemed to be covering up for Alex Cox and taking part in this dark plan. They've got video of her carrying out tires and seats they suspect belong to the Jeep to make it easier for Alex Cox to lie in wait at Brandon Boudreaux's house with his rifle. Detective Hermosino did a very good job, I think, on the stand, and he was a great witness for the prosecutor and for the witnesses of this case. So it's just a manipulation tactic, in my opinion. Something she used all her life, and it worked for her all her life. Now, guys, you're going to have to excuse, again, my audio. You know, this trial's not something you can really schedule, so I'm having to do it in between other things I had to do. I need a studio. I need an editor. I need all this stuff. Let's see. Where can we go now? So what we can do, actually, there's a few things I did want to talk about, but I'd rather show you some of what was going on in the courtroom, which most of you probably already watched, but we're going to talk about it. So I'm going to cover a few things with one or two videos. So Treena Kay basically emphasizes more. We've heard, like I mentioned earlier, Melani Boudreaux's role in all of this. Listen.
The calls that he is having are with this defendant's husband, Chad Daybell. And we know that by 7:22, Alex is moving towards Brandon's home. He knows that Brandon is going to be leaving to take the kids to school because Melani knows the schedule. And he will be waiting when the kids are dropped off. Now, We know that this defendant has been carrying around Alex Cox's phone. The phone subscribed to him. The one that if you looked at, you'd be like, oh, there's where Alex Cox is. Look at that Wi-Fi. She's been carrying it around, and now she knows if at 7:40 there's going to be a handoff of the kids, we need to make the alibi 8 o'clock. She has Alex Cox's phone call her phone, and there's a fake 24-minute call. We know that 20 minutes before Alex Cox shoots at Brandon, Lori Vallow's phone gets a call from Melani Boudreaux. Here they are, still talking and conspiring, trying to figure out what's going on. Where is Brandon? Brandon returns home about 9:13. Alex Cox has been waiting there now for almost 2 hours. He returns home and sees that Jeep. Just like Robert Abitamarco, he notices it being parked really close to his driveway, and it stands out to him. Immediately after hitting Brandon, Alex Cox takes off and is searching for directions out of there. You saw those, and you saw a map as he went east, and those matched with the cell phone and cell tower records. That part is that while this is going on, while Alex is searching for his way home and has been talking to Chad Daybell, knowing now that Brandon's alive, what do? They go hide the tire and hide the seat. Time goes on after the shooting. We know that, again, that burner phone and that Jeep are returning back to Idaho. In fact, Alex Googles all the way to Idaho Falls Airport. He knows how to get home from there. Idaho and around Rexburg around the time of 3:54 and 4:28 when LPR readers note the Jeep back up there. Trying to get the news, Brandon shot? Did he die? Did he live? What happened? Do they have leads? Is it a reasonable doubt that hairspray caused the GSR in the car? No.
For some reason, this part of Treena's closing really irked her nerves, and you can see it in her actions if you know Lori as I do. Watch real close how she turns her head here.
So let's talk about direct and circumstantial evidence. And that's because we have a mixture of both here. So direct evidence is evidence that a witness saw. Her defendant didn't just go buy a phone at Walmart and that was that. This defendant didn't just rent a storage unit and put her own personal property in there. This defendant didn't just decide to loan her Jeep to her brother and then decide to take the rear tire off it and the interior seat out of it. She did all of these things to aid and promote this first-degree murder. She had a financial motive.
So her defense was a little bit different this time. She wasn't really focusing on the motive like she did for Charles Vallow. That makes you wonder why. Well, we do hear Melani Boudreaux's name come up again.
And we've heard something about Melani doing it. She had a financial motive. And I'm not here to tell you that Melani wasn't involved in this. I'm telling you that this defendant was also involved in this. When we talk about a conspiracy to commit murder, there can be multiple people involved in that conspiracy. There were multiple people involved in that conspiracy. Melani Boudreaux is the only one that had the address. So, yes, she was involved. But was she it? No. This defendant helped ensure that her brother could help Melani by killing off her soon-to-be ex-husband, by loaning him the Jeep, by helping make the Jeep available and accessible to fire out of.
Okay, guys, so there you go. Basically, I think and I believe and thank Jesus, we are going to see more charges finally for what happened to Brandon. Too bad she wasn't part of the others. Why they waited so long, I don't know. Maybe they were just not certain how to read her and her true intentions. But it's not hard to see that Melani Boudreaux was following exactly in her mom's footstep and manipulating and lying and creating these situations that they claim were true. It was their rules or the highway. That's what it was. So, allegedly, right now, that's what we have to say is that Melani Boudreaux took part in this. She helped plan this. And that's what it seems like based on the little bit of evidence we've seen. But you can guarantee there's some more evidence out there that we're not seeing related to Melani Boudreaux. I'll have to do a second part to talk about Lori Vallow's statements, because that's what she was trying to do is, do a statement. She was a little less aggressive than she was for Charles Vallow's, but then again, she's heard jurors say that they almost believed her in the Charles Vallow case until I can't remember which point it was. Drop it in comments below if you know, so that we can talk about it next video. What changed that juror's mind and vote guilty? So right now, the jury should be deliberating. I don't know. I'm making this video at this time. I think they should be. And, well, how long will it take? I don't think it's going to take long at all. So I think out of guilt, they might prolong it. But in reality, I think they already know. So share your thoughts below. What do you think? And I'll be sharing comments to the second video that we cover on closing arguments for Treena Kay and closing statements for Lori Vallow. Love you guys, and I'll see you guys soon.